Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Jean Baptiste podcast, or whatever they call these things. Live stream. I'm here with the Blind Shepherd, and we're going to be talking
Yo,
about moral injury.
an interesting subject
Yeah,
that I only more or less learned about last week.
yeah. It's fairly new, and as in as far as BA psychology goes, but it's a very interesting it's a very interesting topic, and I forgot to bring up the actual definition of moral injury. Oops.
Hmm. Crisis of faith, almost, isn't it?
Um. Yes, it's damage that you do to your conscience or moral compass. You know, when you do see or fail to prevent an act that goes against your own moral and ethical values or code of conduct. It's it's you go to a country that is let's talk let's say Iraq or Afghanistan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just going to the country where where they were brutal dictators, and you saw it, and then after you brought down those brutal dictators, you were witnesses to lootings, rapes, and murders, and you couldn't do anything about it. You couldn't do anything to prevent it because to prevent these acts would uh would get you fired from the job that you're doing, and you know you ruin your career essentially. So or you have to do something that is morally questionable, like kill somebody, kill a child, even though that child had a bomb strapped to them, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or you stumble upon a rape happening and you do nothing to stop it. I can bring about a whole bunch of different different examples of that. Um, but what would you think moral injury is?
Well, that sounds about right from what I understand about it. We actually have an example from Canada of this. There was well, I don't know what his actual rank was, but he was a military guy. Um, he was part of the United Nations, and while there, he was I think he was in Africa, and he was forced. He had a gun, same with his troops, and they were forced to watch as a tribe was basically slaughtered. And he was not allowed to actually act on this. And when he got back, it messed him up so much. He ended up, like, I think he actually ended up committing some crimes, like some fucked up crimes too. Um, I learned about it long ago. It just came to my mind when when you're talking about it now. I'll try and look it up myself in a bit. Uh,
Okay. Yeah, and what I'm about to go through is um is what a chaplain. It was done in 2015, but it was a chaplain that within the armed services ministry, which is it's every denomination essentially.
mhm.
The chaplains can and do service every somebody of every faith, because that's how the military chaplains work, and it's not feasible within the military to have a chaplain that cannot do the Catholic Catholic rites and the Protestant rites, or the other Orthodox rites, or even pagan rites. They're Jewish rites, stuff like that. When I say rites, RITES.
Oh, okay, like a ritual sort of thing, or
Yeah, the ritualistic practices of each religion. Every religion has it, but that's basically what they do, and their biblical based stuff is done in a way that both the Orthodox and the Protestants will gain something from it and agree with it. You know, but they within the Veterans Administration, if you're a chaplain in the military, you can retire into working for the VA. And just like in the civilian world where you have chapels within hospitals, the VA has chapels within their hospitals too, so they don't really have that services for people for the inpatients and stuff like that. The whole idea of why that is there is spiritual health. Like there's an aspect to our healthiness that kind of goes beyond our physical health. There's a spiritual health to us too. And even if you're atheist and don't believe in God or spirituality, there are practices you can do that do this, that are the same, that bring out the same kinds of results, such as cleaning your room or cleaning your house.
Jordan B. Peterson.
So yeah, we can do that. Put your house in order, put yourself in order, and that you have, like, I think you put a religious background onto that type of mindset, and it doesn't really it meshes well with that type of mindset. The type of mindset doesn't really. I think it does. I don't know. But I'm about to read, and I got off on a tangent. All right. So now this is about PTSD and moral injury. Moral injury, there may be there's a lot of overlap with PTSD and moral injury, as far as what I'm about to read. So I'm going to be using the word PTSD a lot.
Trigger warning.
Which is post-traumatic stress disorder, and you can get it from any type of traumatic event. It's a spectrum.
Car accidents, for example.
Car accidents, rape, anything really traumatic that it can mess you up in a way. Like there's some people who were traumatized while they're driving a vehicle, right? That they'll never drive a vehicle again. They refuse, and that's one of the signs of PTSD is the refusal of doing things, of doing things that
normal people can do.
Going outside of your comfort zone, essentially. But you kind of need to stay outside of your comfort zone because nobody's really in their comfort zone. If everybody else has to deal with people. So unless dealing with people is your comfort zone, there's very few people are actually in their comfort zones.
Oh, fuck.
But
I accidentally closed and didn't save.
oh fuck.
That sucks.
It does. All right. So, while PTSD may accompany it, moral distress or moral injury is not a medical or pathological condition, but a spiritual and moral issue. And I've rambled on about spiritual health a little bit. Moral health, I would say is essentially the same thing. Yeah, unless you disagree with that.
Sorry, I had computer problems there. What did you say?
I said I already went through my idea of spiritual health, which is essentially the same as moral health in my opinion. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, to me, when I think about spiritual health, I think about the additional factor of having a faith in something higher than yourself, which, in my mind, is I can understand the benefit of it. What's that?
Yeah. So essentially, find the highest good and go for it. Would be, you know, would be a belief in something higher than yourself, like the government, or just being a good, upstanding citizen. I don't know. I don't know what people would find as the ultimate good in life. Somebody who is willing to sacrifice themselves to, prevent exit, or that's seen as something good. But how do you really manifest into the world? That it's a very deep question that has plagued humanity philosophically for thousands of years, and I don't think we're going to actually come up with an answer anytime soon.
Well, I don't think humanity is at a point right now where we are, how do I describe it, mature enough where we can go on without any sort of religious faith. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense, but even, I mean, pantheism is by far a little bit more coherent than some things out there. Yeah. Which pantheism is not really theism, but more deistic in nature than theistic.
Mm-hmm.
Universe, man, the universe is God. Except for it was a scientist that created it.
Pantheism?
Yeah, pantheism.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was I used to be able to spout the name off if there's anybody listening and yelling right now. I think it's Heisenberg.
Heisenberg principle?
No, I think Heisenberg actually created the whole idea of pantheism.
Interesting. I might have to look this up. By the way, this is what the character looks, or your thing looks like. I don't know how much of it you can see. You can't really see much from that due to the angle. How's that? That's better.
That does look good. That does look good. I mean, now obviously I'd have to ask you for a background of some kind.
Some kind.
Yeah.
Oh
no, I'll do it. I could do that.
It depends on what you mean by background.
No, I have an idea for just leave
Oh,
the
okay.
background as translucent.
All right. So yeah, I've seen it like spiritual stuff when I've seen look at my family and whatnot. Like I could see the benefit to having a faith. I myself do not. I lack a faith, so it's definitely interesting to watch.
Yeah, but again, it's not really. It's not really trying to convince you of anything. But I'm trying
No,
to,
I envy those.
actually be able to, um, actually, I don't know. I don't know how to actually put it into words. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I look at the situation when it comes to faith, like similar to that's the word I don't know how to describe it. Sorry, let me give me a second to think. Um, yeah, it's really hard to put stuff like that into words. Brain just shuts down.
I think that's why allegory exists. Really do, because there's some concepts that are just so big that it's like, where do we begin?
like trying to mentally, visually conceive of a fourth dimensional object in fourth dimension.
Yes, yes, it is not. You know, it is not something we have experience in. So our
Yeah,
brains are just like, what? No.
it's fucking hard, man. I've even thought about it. And like, you ever seen that anime Evangelion or whatever it's called?
Yes, yes, that is a fairly good one that
There
people
was
like.
there was a scene in that, or one of the bad guys in it, where they described it as a fourth dimensional object in 2D in 3D, and they described it as what they were seeing was the shadow of the fourth dimensional thing. And that got me thinking. It's like that makes sense. If you look at a two-dimensional, I'm sorry, I'm getting, I'm going off on a tangent because that's something that's been plaguing my mind for fucking years.
How has it been plaguing your mind? Like,
Well, I want to know what that is. Like, if a three-dimensional, if you think about it as a shadow, so a shadow is a two-dimensional object of a three-dimensional thing. So if you're standing and you cast a shadow, that is your two-dimensional representation of the three-dimensional you. So if you scale that up and you have a 3D object that is the shadow of a fourth dimensional thing, how would that fourth dimensional thing look in fourth dimension? Like conceiving what like you it's easy to imagine what a fourth dimensional object would look like in 3 dimensions because we know what a two-dimensional object looks like in a three-dimensional object looks like in 2 dimensions. It seems to shift and meld, and parts of it just don't seem to connect. Like if you stand straight, your arms out, and then you cast a shadow, you got that the Jesus pose basically. So you got the cross symbol. If you turn 90 degrees, now it's no longer a cross; it's a straight line.
yeah, no, I mean, I get that. It's just that's a good way of putting it into words. It's
Mm-hmm.
just there's I don't know. It's one of those things that just for people, I don't know. It's just
It's definitely a mind fuckery thing.
yeah, yeah. It is. It is. It's like that dress thing that happened a couple years ago.
Oh,
Where
that thing. Yeah.
you remember that?
Is it blue or is it gold or whatever it was? I think that's the two. It was blue or gold, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And some people said it was blue, and some people said it was gold.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it actually was gold, but it looked blue. If I remember correctly, I think that's what it was. Because I know I saw it as the blue.
Yeah. I mean, that was an interesting thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but to get back on the topic, oh, potentially morally, and oh yeah, PTSD is a fear victim reaction to extreme conditions that damage the amygdala and hippocampus, the limbic
Really?
brain.
Actually
Yeah.
causes physical damage.
Yes, yes.
Didn't realize that.
It it it, it can yeah, it can cause, you know, neuroticism in some people.
Neuroticism?
Yeah.
Refresh my memory on that.
A neurotic person is somebody who, you know, worries a lot, essentially.
Okay.
In combat related PTSD, would be worrying a lot about security, and rape based PTSD would be where it would be worrying about the next event.
Attack.
Yeah, yeah, and it just goes on and on, and it just spirals downwards to the point that it's definitely a downward spiral. And moral injury requires a healthy prefrontal cortex where empathy and moral thinking occur.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't actually have any. Do I have a bibliography on this? I'll probably try to get one. No, but I'm definitely gonna research that a little bit more. But potentially morally injurious events such as perpetrating, failing to prevent, or bearing witness to acts that transgress deeply held moral beliefs and expectations may be deleterious in the long term, emotionally, physically, psychologically, behaviorally, spiritually, and socially.
Like a fortune teller telling you a prediction and not believing it, but then that prediction comes true. Sorry, I'm kind of making light of that.
Yeah, yeah. No,
That's not it.
that's not it, but that is an appropriate joke.
Hmm.
I
That
still
actually happened to me.
oh
Half of her prediction came true, actually. And it was like done in such a way that it was like life wanted to just piss me off. Go silent.
I didn't mean to go so there, but betrayal felt by soldiers when the motivations that were given for going to war were discovered to be false is the example they give in here. But then
it makes a lot of sense. That's
yeah,
very much Bush era stuff.
yeah. PTSD disrupts the relationships to the world when it becomes unreliable. Moral injury disrupts relationship with self when inner moral core is doubted, essentially.
That's an interesting way of putting it.
Yeah.
So they're similar, but one is external, one's internal.
Yeah, and the rest of it talks about things that I've already mentioned.
What was that, like a newsletter thing you get, or did you do some research before this?
No, this was an action part of a presentation.
Okay.
But what really made me really interested in the topic was this God Understands series. That
does God understand?
No, God understands, and then there's when you feel life is meaningless and without purpose, when you feel angry, when you feel life is unfair. It's supposed to go. It's part of the moral injury thing, part of the moral injury treatment, and the first booklet in this box that I got was essentially saying how you can use this and while seeing a patient.
I see.
This information, if they're like religious and you wanted to, and you were religious as well, and you felt comfortable with talking religion with the person, to give them this information, this, and go over it with them, or send them down to the chaplain so he or she can go over that with you.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I do have some issues with it when it comes to this sort of subject matter. Like I get the parts that like you were saying about the actual physiological harm that PTSD, or not PTSD, but that causes PTSD, I guess you could say, or
Yes,
like,
you can also receive it by, like, say, falling out of a tree, breaking a
mhm,
leg. You know, your body responds to that by making you hyper afraid. If you were hyper afraid to climb trees ever again, for example,
mhm.
it would be a form of PTSD.
See, I like the medical end of that, where you're talking about the actual physical effect on the brain. The parts I don't like is like when we're talking about this moral injury is the almost conceptual ones, that the stuff that has no how do I describe, no biological background, I guess you say, like
When we're talking about like actual moral, not moral, but actual injury to our conscious mind. You know, the how it affects our thinking. It can affect our thinking to the point that you dwell on it, over and over and over again,
I know
and then
that.
you get a tunnel vision to where everything else, or you get a tunnel vision to where everything is painted, you know, within that line of within the lines of that trauma. Um, within the lines of that injury, the actual physical injury. Let's say that, example of a moral injury would be, you were abused by your parents, for example. I'm not
Mhm.
talking about just regular discipline. I'm talking about actual abuse. Um, not getting a spanking every once in a while because you did something bad, but like something awful,
Yeah.
horrible. Um, it, that because you're told by everybody that these people are the ones that are supposed to protect you and supposed to look out for you, and they don't. That could hurt you on a foundational level that is beyond. You're not physically hurt by those actions, but you're hurt, you know, psychologically.
Yeah.
And moral injury is a way to explain why that psychological hurt exists without any actual physical parts of where PTSD itself, the trauma and everything affects your brain in a certain way, but
Mhm.
when you're hit with like an existential type of crisis, which is more what moral injury is. um it it causes there's less damage to be seen by it. Long-term effects, yes, but currently the only studies that I've seen regarding moral injury has to do with extreme trauma, where trauma has been, I mean, where the trauma was so fast and so severe that it really really fucks them up.
Hmm.
It's right now it's entangled with PTSD to the point that it's we look at it from the lens of PTSD, but
Yeah.
it hasn't really been something that has been explored within smaller, minute details. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting because yeah, I don't like. I mean, I get it. I understand the necessity of it. I just don't like it. Like to me, it's not a tangible physical thing. It's too conceptual. It's too assumed. It's not. I want there to be more research into it, like more study about the brain chemistry and the and what certain events trigger and how this affects the brain long term. You know, I like the idea of it being. I don't like psychology. I like psychiatry, basically.
Yeah, I can get that. It's there's some things that though that psychiatry can't fix.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
I think there could be eventually. It's just at the moment probably not.
yeah, but should we though? Should we actually mess with our brain chemistry to that degree? What kind of negative implications would have? Because if you look at most of the uh, most of the antidepressants, for example, that
Mm-hmm.
are out on the market, some of them can cause nausea,
Heartburn, stomach,
diarrhea.
diarrhea.
I mean, we hear all the negative effects of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah, I don't agree. Yeah, I know. What we have right now is not is not preferable. I guess it's not
yeah,
preferential. I do wish there was a better way. It's just I don't like things being you know, I think it's dangerous to make assumptions about people's chemical state without knowing. Yeah.
yeah,
Everything we do, everything that happens to us reflects in the brain chemistry. So any sort of traumatic event, there has to be a reason for behavior. There we go. That's a good way of saying it. There is a scientific reason for behavior. Every behavior. Everything we do is because of something in our brains. Either certain currents going certain directions or chemicals, yada yada yada, all that stuff. So to me, whenever we talk about things like you know solving someone's mental state, I don't like the idea of it being chalked up to some conceptual thing. I like the idea of it being broken down to the actual biological reasons.
okay. I mean, there's some things though that within medical science that we don't have the ability to
Yet.
well yet, but if we ever will have the ability to, I mean, it's still up in the air at this point,
Mm-hmm.
scientifically whether or not that's possible. Well, what we do know is that for a lot of people, concepts, thinking
Are
of,
easier to get a hold of than actual. Yeah, I know.
yeah, well, that's it. Just seems like that's how our brains are wired to work. But we can understand concepts and ideas a little bit easier than certain things. Like you can get somebody that is completely stupid on physics, for example,
Mm-hmm.
but then is really smart on a conceptual idea, for example, and it's an idea that could work, if there's the right follow through to it.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've run out of things to talk about.
No, it's around that 3 o'clock time that you're talking about. So
Is it? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I'll probably get this done sometime this week.
Okay. Hold on. Let me do this. All right. Have a good day, everybody.
See ya.